Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Atlanta Consortium College Panels. We are so excited to have you participating in this event. We have some fantastic schools here with us today. My name is Brianna, and I'll be your facilitator. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. Your camera and microphone are off, so the panelists cannot see and hear you. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenters at any time throughout the panel. This is just one of many different sessions happening, so be sure to check out the schedule on the website. This presentation is being recorded and will be available at strivescan.com/ATL. I'd now like to turn it over to Jody Hester.
Great, thank you, Brianna. And good afternoon. My name is Jody Hester, and I'm Associate Director of College Counseling at Woodward Academy, right here in Atlanta. And I am absolutely thrilled that so many of my counseling colleagues would be able to carve out time in the day to come and hear from this dynamic panel. And as you know, our topic for the day is the year ahead for college admissions. So we have invited incredible guests to come and pull out their crystal balls and offer us insight in terms of what's coming. And Lord knows, living in the middle of a pandemic, it sure would be nice to get a sense of what's ahead. And so please know the Q&A is live and you're welcome to start using that now, but do not use chat. And I promise we will get to as many of your questions as possible, but we may not. But like I said, I'm going to do my very best. I'm a counselor, and I know we always have great questions. And as Brianna said, this session will be recorded and will be shared with you in the coming days. And so now, and I have to say one more quick thing. Some of my very favorite reps are here today. So I know we're going to have a great conversation. And I'm going to start with Romina from Georgia State, and we'll go sort of in order. And I'm going to ask if you would just your name, your institution, your role, and then how many years have you been in higher ed, Romina?
Well, hi, Jody. I'm so excited to be here in this panel with all of you. My name is Romina Torres. I am the Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Georgia State University, located in downtown Atlanta, for some of you who are hopping in from out of state. How long have I been at Georgia State? Almost 8 years. So December will mark my 8th year at the institution, and I have been almost 15 years in higher ed. Hard to believe how fast it goes. But I actually started at another sister institution as a tour guide, and I have worked my way in all different roles, anything from tour guide to filing, to answering the phones, to admissions counselors, and so on. So I do understand everything that we do within the admissions office, and I'm so excited to be here and hopefully answer all your questions.
Great, thank you. And now we're going to go in alpha order, and we'll hear from Georgia Tech. Rick.
All right. Hello, Jody, and everyone else. We appreciate your time. Good to see you all. My name is Rick Clark. I'm the Director of Undergrad Admission at Georgia Tech in Midtown Atlanta. And I have now been at Georgia Tech for 18 years. So if my career at Georgia Tech was an applicant, it would be time for admission review. But in higher ed for now 23 years, having finished my master's actually at Georgia State University in 1998. So right at that 23-year mark overall. Good to be with you and looking forward to the conversation.
Great. And now we're going to hear from Kiara at Scad. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. Hello, I'm Kiara Orange. I work at the Savannah College of Art and Design, specifically the Atlanta campus, also known as Scad Atlanta. And I am the Associate Director for Enrollment. I have been at Scad for 4 years, and that has been the sum of my time in higher education. I actually previously was a high school teacher in Miami, so yeah.
Perfect. And last but not least, we're going to hear from Chelsea at Spelman.
Thanks so much, Jody. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for spending your Wednesday afternoon with us. My name is Chelsea Hawley, and I serve as the Director of Admissions at Spelman College. I've been at Spelman a little under 2 years, but in higher ed around 12 years, most of which was right here in Atlanta. I spent some time at Georgia Tech as well as Emory, and I also got my master's at Georgia State. So we are among friends in this group.
Oh, that's perfect. And so for those of you who are with us today who aren't from Atlanta, who aren't from Georgia, oh, we're very friendly down here. We know each other well and we hang out. So again, welcome. And we're so happy to have you here with us. So, for today, our conversation is really about looking ahead. And in some ways, we almost have to look back before we can look ahead. So I just kind of wanted to ask you, if you can kind of give us a sense of, well, where did you land this year as you opened up, as we all came back to work this fall, sort of where did you kind of land in terms of the number of applications you received last year and how many actually showed up? How many of your beds are full? And, that crazy thing about summer melt. How did you start this year? You all can just start, unmute yourselves. We're just going to be talking for a while. So how did sort of you land when you had move-in day? I'm from Atlanta. I know the traffic's happening at all your places. Kind of where were your numbers, the application numbers? What was last year's pool like?
I'll go ahead and start if that's okay. This year for Georgia State was an unprecedented year. Due to the pandemic, for fall 20 or the 2021 cycle, all the Georgia system schools went test optional, and that really opened the gates to many students to apply to any institution in the state of public institution, in the state of Georgia. But with that, Georgia State specifically, we landed with over 27,000 applications for first-year students. We admitted over 18,000 students, and we have about 5,600 enrolled this fall. All the beds are full. So, and I will say that was going back to quote unquote normal, because there is no new normal, right? But going back to campus and seeing all the students walking around and trying to find their classes, that was refreshing. It was, we all do what we do because we want to be around students, right? We want to be on the campus. So that was very nice. But yeah, it was a unprecedented year as far as number of applications and admitted students for Georgia State.
Great. And so Chelsea, I'm going to have Chelsea come next because it's kind of nice to go from big to let's go and talk about something a little bit smaller. So sort of what happened for Spelman last year?
Absolutely. So I think unprecedented is a word that we can all use to describe last year. Spelman also hit an all-time high with applications. And for those of you that are not familiar, we serve a very niche population. We are a private liberal arts women's HBCU. So at any given time, our student body is under 2,400 students, and our incoming class is anywhere from 550 to 600 students. So not only this year were applications up, we also saw a record incoming class as far as size. And of course, our admissions team has done a wonderful job, but there's these other factors that were out of our control that led to this large class. For us, test optional was huge for both our app numbers as well as deposits. And then also it has been somewhat of the year of the HBCUs in the media. And so there's been this huge light shined on all HBCUs, but Spelman specifically here in Atlanta. And we've seen a lot of students considering HBCUs that may not have been considering them 2 years ago. So we're really kind of looking at all these moving factors. And again, that crystal ball, Jody, how things will play out for this year, only time will tell.
Oh, I know, that is so true. Okay, so we went big, we went small, kind of like Goldilocks. We're going to kind of go medium. And Rick, we'd love to have you tell us kind of what's happening at Georgia Tech.
Sure. So first time being called Goldilocks, I definitely appreciate that. I knew today was going to be a good day. So thanks, Jody. We ended up with, on the first year side, I think at Georgia Tech and certainly Georgia State, I think would be similar here, but talking broadly about just new students in general. So on the first year side, applications around 45,000, new class at 3,450 was the goal. We came in at 3,470. So, I always feel like admission is like landing a plane on an aircraft carrier in the middle of the ocean. It's just that during a pandemic, there's also a lightning storm going on. So, you don't want to short it, or people are going to lose jobs, and mainly me. And you don't want to go too far, or the lines at Chick-fil-A are too long and other problems occur. So kind of somewhere on that boat. And so coming in a little above target, but pretty darn close. I mean, hat tip to all the data analysts out there everywhere that help put these predictive models together. But that's a big part of our story, is that class is 400 bigger than 2 years ago. So it was 3080 2 years ago, 3480 basically this year, and it'll be 3600 to 3650 next year. So Georgia Tech, like a lot of other healthy publics, are definitely in growth mode, and certainly that's true here in our state. The healthy public schools, Georgia State and Georgia Tech on this call being two of those, are under pressure for sure, but also have presidents and leadership at the state and the system level that are pushing growth. So you would hear that from our friends in Athens as well. There's a public school there too.
What's it?
I don't know.
Athens.
It's been a long day. I can't remember the name of the school, but anyway, if you hear barking, it's coming from there. And then, on the transfer side, we brought in about 1,300 students. And so one thing that we've been talking a lot about, and I think this is important for counselors and students in general, is I really do think if we look at the future of higher education, we're talking about students coming through lots of different avenues to their degrees. The term at which they start, not just fall only, but possibly summer, possibly spring, not just in person only, but possibly hybrid, possibly online. And then also not just first year traditional, but, transfer students for sure. So that's about 50% more transfer students than we enrolled just 5 years ago. So we're in growth mode on the transfer side, as well. So that's basically how it shook out for Goldilocks in the Seven Dwarfs. Proud to be a part of it.
Great. And then Kara, to give us an update about Scad, Atlanta.
Yeah, so application wise, we were around 14,000 with, incoming freshman application, which is pretty consistent. It's typically, fluctuates between 14 and 15,000. And like everyone else, kind of echoing, this was our largest incoming class. So for both campuses, both Atlanta and Savannah, we were around 2,700 incoming freshmen and around 4,500 total students, including transfer. And kind of also echoing Rick, we definitely saw a growth in transfer students this year as well. So in terms of like looking forward to this coming year, it's going to be something new and exciting for all of us to kind of see how things shake out, but growth is definitely happening.
Kara, I love how you said something new and exciting. I think, given we've been living like this since March 2020, I'm going to take new and exciting, although some days it's like tired and draining, but new and exciting. And kind of a piece of that, I wonder, and particularly coming back to Spelman, Chelsea, I know last year it was virtual. So for counselors, it was our class of 2021, your class of 2024, and then now welcoming your class of 2025. What was the fall like? So you have sophomores, it's their first time being on campus, and then you have first years, it's their first time. So how kind of has that transition been? And honestly, I think I want to hear from Spelman, but also a question for everybody. How are students showing up on campuses given this space since 2020? Chelsea, and definitely welcoming 2 new classes all at once. What's that been like?
Absolutely, Jody. I really feel for these students for the past couple of years. And I think we're looking at more years of students who have kind of missed out on some benchmarks. So to your point, we're talking about students who missed prom, who missed graduation, who spent their first semester virtual. And Spelman is a place where tradition is everything. Those first 2 weeks are really monumental in their transition into college. So we planned a student orientation for our first year students as well as returning sophomores. So I think students are excited to be back on campus. We do still have pretty strict COVID guidelines, so they're navigating that space, but really just trying to catch up and make up for lost time on getting involved, getting to know their peers. And I think our faculty are feeling the same way, really going above and beyond and trying to get to know both classes of students. So we're talking about two pretty large groups for our campus. I would say anywhere from 11 to 1,200 students. This is their first time on campus. And so, you know, I think we're all trying to kind of meet them where they are, being understanding, having grace, both for faculty, staff, and students.
I think that's such a kind of that whole idea of extending grace. But for the others of you, sort of what are you seeing with your first year students as they're sort of adjusting to, you know, just in general, the adjustment to living and being that first year college student, it's enough, but I know we're in Georgia and there are a lot of people down here who think pandemic's over. No, it's still a thing. So what are you seeing on your campuses this year with your first year students? And then even some of those second year students, again, like Chelsea is saying, that this is kind of like their first time being really bad.
I would say that our students, one, are excited, you know, after being, you know, locked up for so long. Sorry for the noise in the background, but after being so locked up for so long, just being with students and present, you know, in person. We had, starting in the spring, we started kind of doing portions of students coming back, like we were operating at 33% capacity, but now having everyone back is really just great. That buzz and that life that's back on campus is amazing. And we are still trying to, like Chelsea mentioned, still incorporating those traditions and those things that we did, you know, pre-pandemic, and maybe just structuring it a little bit differently. So Scad has a lot of signature events that we host, and it's typically like huge in-person events with like panels and everyone kind of coming in. So we transition some of those virtually, or are doing partial virtual sessions for those, and like more curated smaller events and workshops and things like that, to kind of continue to have students kind of, you know, get that community and those still same experiences that they would have pre-pandemic, because they missed out on a lot. And, you know, we're trying to give them as much of a college experience as they can potentially have.
So, Romina, Rick, anything you'd like to add?
I mean, very similar to what Kiara said. We're working with our Office of Student Engagement on creating those experiences that students from last year were not able to take part on. This year, for example, we offer campus tours, whether from the Welcome Center or from our orientation leaders for the incoming sophomores, because they have never stepped foot on campus. So we realized that, and a lot of them were requesting it. So outside all we offering, they were also willing, like, you know, to be part of it. So just looking at any type of events that can really bring the students back on campus and that engagement, that student experience that they really missed on last year. For this year, freshmen, they're very excited. I couldn't agree more with Kiara and Chelsea. They're very excited to be on campus, to be in something like a normal experience. Again, we're not fully normal, even though we are in the classrooms, we are in the student center, everywhere. But yeah, I mean, you still see some hesitation from the student as far as the space. You have this hesitation from maybe staff and faculty, and mask on, mask off. I mean, and we can mandate mask, so just an example. But yeah, trying to make the best of what we have, looking at the opportunities on how we can better improve our services and experience for our students.
So one kind of theme that I really heard from everybody when we started is this idea of growth in your applications, growth sort of in the numbers of students. The beds are full. So are you seeing that growth in terms of your staff? Are you seeing that growth in terms of who's doing all of this work? And just kind of on a basic level, who's reading all these applications? So do you see that same growth happening on your staffs?
I have a feeling we're going to have a similar answer here, but I'll start. No. I can say that I am thankful that we've come out of a hiring freeze. I mean, so last year when we were already down and the system froze hiring, we kind of went through a year with 11% more applications down for staff members, which percentage wise is significant. What we at Georgia Tech do to accommodate for that, and where we were able to, certainly during the pandemic, was through hiring seasonal readers to assist. And we've continued to do that. So when we started bringing seasonals into our reading process, I think we started the first year with 4 and we're up to 40 now. So this is certainly a model. Not all schools use it, but many certainly do. And at this point, we have a lot of folks that are seasonally with us who have been there double the amount of time of some of our full-time folks. And so, I think that this is also, as we were talking to Brianna, our facilitator at the top of this, she was talking about side gigs and the gig economy in general. So I think that if I'm a counselor at a high school, traditionally the perspective might have been a bit of skepticism around seasonal people. And I hope that, like many things, the pandemic has changed that initial reaction to being more of, kind of makes sense. I mean, there's a lot of reason why a seasonal employee adds a lot of value and brings a lot of interesting and helpful perspective, and is a big part of how these schools are, able to accommodate for growth in their applicant pools. So could go on a long time about why I think that's a wise and future model. But I do think the takeaway for a counselor on the webinar is to ask questions around how seasonals are used, and to be kind of open to listening to what institutions have to say about how that all transpires.
Thank you. Others thought about, how did you manage the growth last year? And again, as we're looking forward, many of us are still in that test optional space and all of that. So how are you managing the volume and keeping your eyes sort of from getting crossed and not losing sight of what's in front of you?
Absolutely. So I'll echo Rick's no as far as full-time staff increasing. And I think in admissions, we're used to that. It is a high turnover field. And so we do see young counselors coming in and out. We do utilize seasonal readers at Spelman as well. It's a much smaller amount than what Rick laid out, but we're a really small team. We have just 6 full-time staff on the counseling side that are reading and reviewing applications. And for us, we are expecting to see that application number rise. Last year, 11,000 was a record for us. Right now, and I'm thinking that we may be closer to 12,000. And so that's increasing. I think for us, it's looking at our processes and seeing if there's more effective ways to do the work that we're doing. We spent a good amount of time bogged down in GPA calculations in previous years. So that is a change for us in rethinking which GPAs we would recalculate and which others we would take directly off of the transcript. So that is going to be a big change for us this year that will free up a lot of time for my staff.
So I'm a former college admissions person in my old life. And I find myself, I'm always fascinated with the reading and what goes into make up that file. I mean, back in my day, you lug paper files around. And so I know so much of this now is online, but when you come to evaluate files, typically, what is it that you're looking for? And more importantly, how much time in a given day are you spending looking at a file? About how many do you read per day? And what sort of are those things that really catch your attention that you want to see from students and that you also want to hear from counselors? Who'd like to go first? Romina, you look like you'd like to go.
Well, mine is easy because we don't have a holistic admissions process. Georgia State is pretty straightforward. We look at the recalculated high school GPA and SATs or ACT scores, and we have what we call the freshman index. So it is very long formula where you combine the GPA and the test scores, and they give you that magic number. And based on that, we'll place or we'll recommend admissions to the students, and we'll have the student that will be admitted to the honors college, we'll have the student who will be regular admitted to the university, and then we'll have students admitted into one of our success programs like Success Academy or Panthers Excellence. A big change for our admissions process this year is, again, we are resuming requiring SAT or ACT scores, and that's for all public institutions in the state of Georgia. So please make sure that you share that with your students, all the counselors today on the call. It is a big change because a lot of students are still assuming that will be test optional or asking if you're going to be test optional. So again, pretty straightforward. I will say where the more holistic process comes in is for those students right on the line between being regular admitted or being placed in Success Academy, or those that will get admissions into the honors college. So we'll look at the rigor of their academic classes from high school, and we'll look at if they submitted an essay or letter of recommendation.
Sure. Kira, could you talk a little bit about the application review process for Scad?
Yeah, so it's going to be similar. Traditionally, we will look at, the high school transcripts as well as the SAT or ACT scores. But actually for Scad, the SAT and the ACT are going to be optional for fall 2022. So that's good information for you all to know. But we do also like a holistic approach. So while there may not be requirements for certain materials, we do still look at letters of recommendation, statement of purposes, resumes, and things like that to kind of get a bigger or a better view of the student overall. Sometimes if a student may not meet certain requirements, we may request those materials just to kind of, strengthen their application, get a better, view of them, their whole entire story, versus just the numbers that we can see on the paper. So definitely encourage students to submit those pieces. It can be useful with like scholarship consideration, things like that, as well. So, yeah.
Perfect. And I'm just, because I think about it, and I think you all sort of hit on this, that pandemic has changed a lot of things. And I certainly know as a counselor, how I approach my work, what I do, it's changed since March 2020. So even for you, maybe on a personal level or in terms of the work, how have things changed because of the pandemic? And then certainly moving forward, what are some of those anticipated changes that you see kind of coming in terms of the practical sort of day-to-day pieces of the life of admissions and things like that?
Maybe I can jump in on that real quickly. I mean, one of the things that the pandemic broke in a good way, and maybe I should even say like something that I've been really convicted about during the course of the pandemic, is what a crappy job either I personally or certainly Georgia Tech and maybe higher ed in general was doing as it related to providing students access to information without having to physically come to campus. And I know students are burned out on Zoom, and the virtual world is maybe not what we would pick first. But the truth is that the information that all of us have been able to provide, the access to students, the access to professors, the content in general, the thought around what we're providing and how we're providing it, is so much better than it was before. And as we look to expand access to students, whether that be underrepresented students, socioeconomically disadvantaged students, whatever the demographic or categorization that you want to choose might be, or hey, just kids from California that can't come to Atlanta because that means missing practice or missing work or the financial burden of that. Like, we're doing a much better job in that regard. And that is great. That's also the future, no doubt, of the work of a college admission counselor. So for instance, we're looking at space in our buildings right now around like, can we allocate an office that's basically just for future virtual programming, right? So Jody, let's say that we're doing a Woodward Academy high school visit, but we're not coming to you in person. Somebody could go into that office and behind them is a good sort of Georgia Tech backdrop. And they also, if they had a shared office or a shared space, that's an isolated place that can be quiet. Like, that is the future of recruitment. And, yes, we'll be welcoming people onto campus and doing tours, but that is no doubt going forward and it's a good thing, and many of us have been able to quote visit schools or have conversations with students or counselors in places that we hadn't stepped foot in that physical state or country, maybe ever, or certainly in decades. So I'd say that is one thing that, for me at least, immediately, jumps to mind. And then sort of on that note of hybrid or modalities, is just in my opinion, again, like how students in the future are going to earn college degrees. I mean, I have a 13-year-old, and we were in a conversation just this last weekend about, I don't think he's going to have a traditional college experience. I don't think that kid's just going to go for 4 years and walk across campus and take his classes. I mean, I really do think that we're looking at a time and a space where it's kind of plattering and cobbling together, and some of it's hybrid and some of it's virtual and some of it is in person. Georgia Tech has been talking about a fully online bachelor's in computer science. I mean, that wouldn't surprise me. These are the conversations, I think. University of Florida, right? And you know this better than I do, but right, they've been doing this for a number of years where one of your first semesters is going to be online. I think that helps in growth. It is the way that people need to communicate in business in the future, what we're trying to prepare kids for to be successful as graduates and future workforce members. So that's all good. That's all important.
That's great. Any other sort of thoughts about how you've changed and how that's moving forward in this space?
Yeah, I just wanted to add the access to the virtual content, particularly on the academic side, has been really a godsend this year. And while students are excited to tour campus again and come to on-campus open houses, I encourage them not to forget about some of that virtual programming. That is the kind of content that we're unable to provide at large scale oftentimes on campus. And so for students and families to find that sweet spot of virtual opportunities as well as on-campus opportunities, I think is critical this year.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so you all, let me just be clear. I have had such a great time talking with our panelists. I almost forgot we have other counselors who are on the call with us today. And so I've been a very bad host. I'm supposed to be monitoring the question and answers. So please, you all, I remembered, I'm coming to you all. So please go ahead and start putting your questions. Some of you are already there, but please make sure you are putting questions into the Q&A, and we're gonna start looking at that. So again, I apologize. I told you this was going to be a great panel. So I'm opening up our Q&A box. And so I love this question. Which of the schools need seasonal readers, and how do I become one of those? So again, somebody on here is like, okay, I need a side gig. And so they want to know who needs them and how do they become a seasonal reader for any of your institutions?
I can say again, we are hiring around 40 on the first year side, and we are using some folks in transfer as well. It is cyclical, so most of our hiring is certainly done in the spring and early summer. But one thing I would say is keep an eye out on some of those, thinking about other institutions too. Keeping an eye out on some of those Facebook pages, the college admission counselor page, even I've seen it. I'm not sure all the other affiliates, but SACAC has even had that. I've seen it before in their jobs board where they're posting for seasonals of various institutions. And here again, the nice thing is it's done virtually, and at least for us it is. So we have people all over the country that are reading for us. So it wouldn't necessarily even bind you to your own region anymore, which it used to. At least I would think for many institutions that's going to be the case, is that you'll be reading pretty much fully online. So I would keep an eye on some of those job boards and groups like that.
And then Chelsea, for your readers?
Yeah, so I would say that we are also kind of behind when we would typically look for seasonal readers. But I think that those opportunities are more so advertised within the higher ed community, and then of course the K through 12 adjacent community. So absolutely, SACAC if you have relationships with admissions offices, reaching out and just showing interest, just because, you know, these are oftentimes positions that we're thinking about a few months in advance for our next cycle. And those numbers kind of change every year depending on who might be returning as a seasonal reader.
Great. And then Kiara or Romina, do you all do seasonal readers? Okay, Romina's like, no, we're processing all of that ourselves. Great, thank you. And then our next question is, can you talk about new or exciting academic programs or new areas of academic emphasis?
So for Spelman, we have not launched any new academic programs for first-year undergraduate students. We've got into the adult learning space through the pandemic. So we've launched eSpelman, which is more of a continuing education certificate model. So there's a lot of excitement and momentum around eSpelman currently. But I will say for the past 3 or 4 years, our current president, Dr. Campbell, has really been focusing on the tradition of the arts at Spelman. So our art history and curatorial studies program is an amazing program for students interested in the arts. We also have a fully funded pre-college summer program that feeds into that major. So if you have any young women in your classes or at your high schools that are interested in the arts, I think that it is an amazing pipeline into a field that's underserved for Black museum curators.
Great. Any other new programs, new things you'd like to highlight and share with our counselors today?
It's not a new academic program, it's the Delta Student Success Center. And what it does, it provides services to those students who are young entrepreneurs. So, you know, any student that want to start their own business, whether it is in software or any social entrepreneurship, we provide them with the tools that they need. We advise them on how to go ahead and launch that new business. So we have students that have started film production companies. We have students that have started food delivery companies, software, I mean, anything. It is a great center. I recommend you to look to learn more about it. Again, it's called the Delta Student Success Center. It's part of the Robinson College of Business at Georgia State. And again, I mean, it's something that we really emphasize when we're meeting a new prospective student, because that's a big area right now in entrepreneurship.
Hey, Kiara or Rick, anything you'd want to highlight new for our counselors?
Yeah, so it's not necessarily new, but something that's really growing is our dual enrollment. It's, you know, we offer half tuition scholarships for the dual enrollment students that participate in. It's a great way for them to kind of get a taste of Scad and the different programs that we offer. We are a more specialized institution in that we offer, you know, majors related to art and design related careers, as well as tech. So we do like animation and UX design and things like that. But a lot of times, you know, students may not have access to that, like art related courses in their high schools. So it's a great way to kind of, you know, test it out and try it. So definitely encourage that.
Yeah, for us, we brought back a major that had gone away at the bachelor's level. It continued at the master's level, but in the College of Architecture, the Bachelor's of Science in Building Construction is back now as a major, and you don't have to look around Atlanta much to figure out why. That is certainly popular and one that is backed by popular demand. And then just to kind of piggyback there on Kiera's point, you know, if there are counselors here from Georgia, dual enrollment, and specifically online dual enrollment at Georgia Tech is now at about 700 students, mainly taking advanced math courses and also computer science courses as well. So certainly something to keep in mind and look into. And those programs will absolutely be growing in the years ahead as well.
Great. Well, and so back to the Q&A box. And then this question really touches on some changes that the university system of Georgia made in terms of test optional last season, and now this year back to requiring test scores for all of our public universities in the state of Georgia. And the question is that certainly understanding test optional is no longer a thing for this season. And so for Georgia Tech and for Georgia State, given that testing is now back on the plate, how are you going to approach it this season? Are you going to be able to give less weight to it, given the lessons that you learned from last year of not having it and now being forced to use it? And I do use the word forced because I do not believe this was a decision that people like me or people like you really wanted to have happen, but it's here. So how are you using and coming back to test scores for this season? So thank you. That was a great question.
I'm happy to jump in. For Georgia Tech, what we've kind of found over the years is that based on the type of courses our students are taking and how they're doing in those courses, as well as the ability to kind of juggle everything they do outside the classroom, that is most predictive of what makes a good and successful Georgia Tech student. So not requiring test scores last year, and about 36% of students chose not to send them in, and about a quarter of our class this year has entered without testing. We feel really confident in their ability to do well, to persist, to retain, to graduate. The Board of Regents, asks that research universities around our state have students satisfy at a 440 math and a 480 critical reading. I believe those are the two thresholds. For us, we're not going to differentiate above that. So if a student makes an 800 or if a student makes a 500, we're not going to look at those differently because it's the rest of the application. So as long as a student has a score that qualifies above what the Board of Regents sets at the research level, then it won't matter beyond that for us.
Hey, Romina, thoughts about welcome back testing for this year?
Yes, so because we don't have a holistic admissions process, students do have to meet the minimum Board of Regents requirement, like Rick mentioned, the 480 in critical reading and 440 in math. That doesn't guarantee admissions into the university because, like I mentioned before, our admissions is based on a freshman index formula. So we're looking at a combination of that GPA and combined SAT or ACT scores that students have. On the honors, because I know that question was also on the chat, from the honors perspective, they're going to emphasize a more holistic review process for those students interested in the honors college. So that means that SATs or ACT scores may not play a role or a main factor when they're making those decisions. And just to go or give you more color, a student first has to apply to the university, be accepted, and then they'll review by the honors college. So that's why they're able to do a more holistic process on their end.
Okay, so it's boggling my mind, but I realize we have been here for almost 40 minutes. And so, it's that old saying, time flies when you're having fun. This has been such a delight, and being in this virtual space, it's just great to see friends again. But as we wrap up, I'm sort of wondering, what are your hopes and wishes and dreams as we're entering into this next cycle, and you're out there, and before you start getting caught up in the reading, what are your hopes for this cycle that we're in now?
I would say I'm wishing our students and parents the most anxiety-free as possible year that they can have about this process. We are all getting our sea legs back on how things should be, and really just taking advantage of the resources. There's been a lot of amazing things that came out of a really hard year and a half for us. And I'm really excited about hearing the stories of our students, of how they spent the pandemic, hearing them be introspective in their essays. And so there's a lot of change, but I think this break, if you will, from being in person ultimately has been a good thing for many areas of the application process. So yeah, just staying stress-free in a time where I know that it's difficult.
Oh my gosh, and I wish that for all of our counselors as well. So I'm watching the clock. I'm going to, I'm an educator, so I'm a rule follower. So I know we promise only 45 minutes, but in your own way, and I know in your hearts, counselors, you're out there thanking each of our panelists for a fabulous conversation. And again, counselors, I want to thank each of you for joining us this afternoon. And I know it's crazy busy for all of us right now, but thank you. And Chelsea, I'm going to wish that for my students as well. So thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, Jody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. This session will be recorded and available on the strivescan.com/ATL website. And do know there are more events happening the next couple of days with this program. So thanks again for joining us and have a great day.